All right, welcome back, everyone. So today we're going to be covering a bit of a tier list. So the goal here is to kind of give a blanket overview of the current state for particular ships. We're going to do it by manufacturer, so I'll be going over RSI. Some ships obviously can't be a part of the tier list because they're in concept, and I will highlight those. I'll also highlight those that are in production in case you're interested to see, hey, is this ship, is it just in concept or is it something they're actively working on? To my best guess, right, based off the information that CIG has provided, I will put them in the production tier if they're actively being produced or CIG has said as much. Otherwise, the other ones, it's just kind of looking at, hey, are they average? Are they below average? Are they underperforming? Are they excelling generally at what they're doing? Or are they S tier, right? Are they something that is just in the meta or extremely excelling at their particular category or what they can do or bring to you as far as utility is concerned? So again, because of the fact that this listing it's hard to kind of set this up because each of the different categories would make more sense, like a PvP category and a hauling category. But I'm trying to do it by manufacturer to get you a better idea. So it has to be kind of just thinking of it against their peers. And so I'll try to maybe highlight a few peers if I can. But the goal here is just kind of tell you how the ship's doing, and then give maybe a description around what it's meant to do and how it's doing in that area. To go along with that, this isn't to get you trying to buy a ship or pledge for one. Essentially, even though IAE is coming out, it's a good idea maybe to possibly rent those that are in the Excel or meets meta category, because it may, and you'll also find that these ships that are doing higher in this tier listing are probably ships you're going to find around the verse. And there's a reason why you see them around the verse, is because they're popular due to how they perform in the game and how they're helping people meet their needs of what they want to do in the game at this current time. Again, it's all based off of current state, and it's all very much my opinion. So let's get into this. I also potentially may do like a CCU discussion on a separate video if people are interested in that, so we can kind of discuss what are some of the strategies that you could potentially get these ships cheaper and possibly save quite a bit of money in that end. So if you're interested in that, let me know down below. Additionally, you can also check the comments down below, and maybe I'm just off my rocker with some of these. So up first, we have the Scorpius Antares. So unfortunately, this is underperforms. So this particular ship, even though it's interceptor tuned, it's a decent heavy fighter. From that perspective, it's okay. But from the secondary perspective, which is it has to have a co-pilot to bring its real, what it's functionally meant to do, which is either have an EMP or it can offer up a quantum dampener, so that prevents people from leaving the fight. Essentially, you can no longer nav out. So in theory, that sounds good, but in practice, it's much better to bring two separate ships to do that. You can have one that focuses on it, and then in that case, it'll actually bring more firepower and stuff like that as well. So putting all of that into one ship is just not successful currently. And again, it just ties up two people for a job that usually two ships can do just fine and probably bring more firepower. So it's an underperformer. A way this ship could get better is possibly CIG could change that option of the EMP or a quantum dampener, allow the pilot to put one in as a turret, like essentially, and then give it the control of the pilot. So, let them choose. Do you want to be an EMP currently and then take that out in your as your setup, or do you want to be a quantum dampener and then have that as an offering instead? So just allow the pilot to choose one of those two before they go out in the fight, and then only have that option when they're out there in the verse. That would be probably the best way to change this ship. But for now, it's completely an underperform. It's not something you're going to see a lot of people in. The Scorp, originally I put it in Excel, but I'll put it in meta. It is a fairly meta fighter for the heavy fighter component. It is good at squadron fights, so it's not something you're going to dogfight one-on-one. I mean, you can, but and the other person has to be pretty terrible if they're in something like a Gladius, right? But and it's tanky and its firepower is decent, but against the long term of things like the Hornet and stuff like that brings more firepower. But as far as recent updates and buffs, it's interceptor tuned, so it does a good job being able to dictate if it wants to leave the fight. If there's another interceptor that can follow you, sure, you'll have to evade that. But all in all, it's a pretty good. I mean, it's one of the better, probably one of the best heavy fighters that's currently offered, which is hard to say because heavy fighters right now are in a really rough spot. So if you're interested in a heavy fighter, it's a good spot to good ship to try out. It's also good with the turret gunner because it does have a turret. It's not as much firepower as some other turrets might offer, like the Hurricane, but it's decent enough firepower, and some of the heavy ballistics on it, like the mass drivers, can do some serious damage to like snub fighters and other small fighters with good volleys, and really just knock them off their axis and really black out the power. I mean, it could really do some serious damage. So there's definitely some good pros to this. Again, it excels pretty well in squadron fights. So ground vehicles, unfortunately, with the links here, all of these are going to be largely underperform. across the board here, because ground vehicles, unfortunately, in Star Citizen just are very niche. There isn't a lot of use case for them. You can bring them out in a ship and then use them for their intended purpose, whatever it is that you want to use them for. But unless they offer a specific capability, largely speaking, there's real no major use for them. So rent them and try them out, but there's not going to be like there's no reason to really pledge for it for sure, unless it's something you really want. And there's you could just buy them in game, and so it's I don't know. They just they probably need their own tier listing, to be honest, but there's not much they can offer. For any ground vehicle you find, if they haven't met a railgun yet, the railgun's going to typically offer much more capability than even a ground vehicle can, minus mobility, right? So mobility is much better in a ground vehicle than walking anywhere, but there's very niche and very specific ground vehicles that actually do well, and those will score well, but largely speaking, most of them are fairly just unremarkable. So we have the links here. This is the Fortuna, and then we have the regular Ursa. So all of these are part of the Ursa lineup. There's like a luxury one. This one I think is based off of St. Patty's Day, so it's kind of the Phoenix slash Emerald, kind of the green variant. And then you have the Nursa, which is the Ursa medivac. However, this would be an S tier. So this is something that's in its own meta. This is a capability to allow you to respawn. So it does have a tier 3 medical bed in there, which just means you can heal tiered injuries only up to tier 3. So tier 1 and tier 2, you can't heal those. However, you can just blanket respawn in it. So it does offer 2 respawns with the newest med gel enhancements or changes. But to go along with that, it's such a versatile ship because it fits in so many other ships that it allows you, again, to bring a medical bed in any ship that you typically wouldn't have one. So it really is a standout. They're also relatively cheap in game, so it's definitely worthwhile trying out and then loading it in the vehicle. During IAE, if you can rent one of these and rent maybe a Connie or something, you can put it in the Connie and it gives you a respawn capability. So definitely an S tier or a meta type of ship or a vehicle in this case. So up next we have the Aquila. A lot of these, I would say, we'll say average. I was going to say underperform, but they are average for sure. So the Aquila doesn't have anything notable with it currently because it does have a radar. It's meant for exploration. With all the Connies, there's just a couple of variations with each one, typically the top turret. And in this case, that top turret is swapped out for a radar. And that radar just doesn't currently offer anything. As far as like from a Connie's perspective, it does a good job. It has a fair amount of missiles on it. It has the snub fighter, which actually is not necessarily as much of a pro as you think it would be, because in some instances that snub fighter may not work correctly due to the bugs that Star Citizen might have. But all in all, it's fine. It does offer what Connies offer, which is great firepower. It is a gunship. But in this case, there are better Connies that exist, and so we'll kind of get to that. But most of the Connies are going to be in this average category. They're definitely worth trying out, but they don't necessarily excel over other ships due to the recent nerf that they've had. They have great firepower, though, so if it's something you want to try out, it's definitely worthwhile. The Phoenix and the Emerald are essentially the same ship. One's just green and one is white. The Emerald is kind of the St. Patty's Day, if my understanding, kind of variant of the regular Phoenix. And so the Phoenix is a luxury version. So both of them, again, have the same kind of interior and look and feel. It's just one's green and one is white. Again, as I mentioned before, the same kind of firepower. They do come with a default loadout that's a little bit different than the standard Connies, but you just swap them out with different size 5 guns. Those are I don't like to look at a ship's loadout as its key dimension because most of them are not bespoke and can be changed in game. So that's not any particular reason to downvote a ship or put it lower in a tier. However, again, it offers the same kind of capabilities that any other Connie does. So it's not really a standout in any way, shape, or form. I like to use them as a runabout a little bit to go here and there, but they're fairly expensive for what they are. The old original Connie here, so the Andromeda. The Andromeda is a good ship as well. As far as what it can do, it's actually the top of probably here of this listing. And I'll put the Phoenix in front of the Aquila as well. So the Andromeda has a bit more missiles than the regular Connies, but again, still has a snub. All of these have a snub fighter. All of them offer a similar layout, so they all have the same kind of look and feel. So again, offering similar capabilities. However, the one that is a standout is the Taurus, and you will commonly find this with most people. I wouldn't necessarily call it meta as much anymore these days, as other people have come up with other haulers, but it offers a hauling capability. The bottom part, because it doesn't have a snub fighter like the others do, but you can actually bring a fighter with you, right? So you can put a Fury in there. You could put a couple Furies if you wanted to. You could bring a Fury and a Pulse, and you could put the Nursa in there. So it has quite a bit of versatility with its larger cargo section. And actually, the tractor beam is a pretty good bonus as well. And you can open the cargo bay from inside the ship. It's one of the few ships that actually has that capability. I don't know why they haven't done that with other ships at this point. So you can lower the cargo bay, hop in the tractor beam, and then do what you need to do. If you don't need to get out of the ship, then there's really no reason to, because you can lower the cargo bay and deal with the tractor beaming. So it's quite a nice ship for what it can do, and it's a decent thing to probably rent and try out if it's something you're interested in. The Auroras, all of these are fairly average. They're almost underperformers because they're starter ships, but we'll just leave them as average because for what they offer and their current pricing, they're fine. The LN here, you have the ES, you have the MR, and then you have the LX. So different variations there, but largely speaking, they're looking to get a rework as well. So I can't speak too much about them because I feel like that rework might go live during IAE. So probably more to come. So I'll put them as average because of that. Otherwise, I'd probably put them in underperform because they do need a lot of work. And you can't even really, you can pledge for them as a single ship, but you can't actually get them you cannot get them as a starter ship currently. So that is something that probably get rectified possibly in IAE. Otherwise, early next year, they'll probably release them as the gold standard. For now, they're underperforming probably without that gold standard. With the gold standard, they'll probably be average. I imagine that gold standard will probably come any day now. At any rate, it's a ship that people probably like just for what it is, because that's the starter pack that a lot of people will choose, but it doesn't offer anything super special that's a standout. So we have our first concept now, the Galaxy. This is very much so in the concept realm. It's not currently in production in any way, shape, or form. It was mentioned by John Crew that they do plan on potentially bringing it out of concept and start doing some production with it after the Perseus, but we'll have to see if he sticks to that. That was said during one of the Bar Citizens, and so it's possible again that they do that. It is something they have said, but we'll have to wait and see in the production reports if they're going to stick to that after the Perseus's release, if they'll go ahead and cover the Galaxy. Additionally, there'll be some other ships on here, like the new RSI salvaging ship, the Salvation. I don't have any way to put them in a tier list because they'll just be coming out. So feel free to try them out if you want to, but there's going to be quite a few ships that I can't cover because they're just not in game yet. But we do know they're coming. Next ship up is the Arastra. So there's really no sign of this, unfortunately, as well. It's a ship even I'm interested in, but I did have to melt it to go towards other stuff earlier this year. And it's just one of those things that there's no sign of it, right? There's no sign of life for this particular ship. Until they show any sign of vehicles doing refining in the game, then you may see some news about this. But until you see some news about refining in ships, there probably won't be any major updates for this particular ship. Up next, we have the Meteor. For me, I want to put this as an underperformer. So there are going to be some people that probably want to see this as average, but for me, it's a bit of an underperformer. It's a nice looking ship, and I like the interior and stuff. But especially the way the Mantis does, it's its own ship. People like it. It's maybe something you might want to try out. You may enjoy. But from a perspective, you're not going to see a lot of people. It's got a very niche, I think, community that follows it and likes it because, again, its capabilities are unfortunately fairly lacking. It has good firepower, but the lack of mobility and the lack of sustainability with its toughness and stuff like that, it's not even quite a glass cannon, right? So I don't know. Maybe with engineering, actually, it might excel a bit more there, to be honest. It's not something I was able to try in the newest engineering patch, but that could be where it could potentially shine. But for now, in the current game, I think it's an underperformer, unfortunately. Although, again, you might see people in the comments that might disagree. Mantis. So this is an S tier. This is a ship that offers its own capability. Quantum dampening is not uncommon for ships. There's quite a few that do offer that. However, quantum interdiction is something specific to the Mantis. The difference is quantum dampening prevents you from using your nav speed to get away. So it's going to restrict your speed to SCM only, which other ships can keep up with. Some have higher SCM speeds than others, so it's not like you're 100% stuck, but it does, lower the ceiling on your speed significantly with that quantum dampener. However, quantum interdiction, the QI part, is it actually pulls you out of quantum. So this is the only ship that does that. It is something obviously like pirates and things of that nature. So it has its own niche part in the verse, and you'll know it when you're being interdicted because you get a whole notification for it. It's recently been reworked quite a bit to work with server meshing, so it is an interesting ship, and it stands alone on its own there. It's interceptor tune. I think it's interceptor tuned. It at least has a high speed, but I believe it's interceptor tuned as well. At any rate, it's even if it wasn't interceptor tuned, it would still be a high scoring ship because again, it's a unique, standalone, capable niche ship that if you learn to master this ship, you will always have good friends in the verse. Medivac. Unfortunately, this is a bit of an underperformer too. I'll put it in front of the Meteor. I would say both of them. So this is honestly just a respawn point, and gosh, in the new 4.4, the new version of the Onyx facilities actually use a medium hangar. So there's these space stations in 4.4 out in Nyx, spoiler alert, but they actually use a medium hangar instead of a large one. So even the new medevac and the new triage, both the Apollos, can't even use their respawn capabilities. You'd have to leave it out on the pad outside. It does offer a pad, so there's that opportunity. But man, really what a kick in the teeth for a ship that it's kind of for like bunker running. It's out for, you could use it in FPS. That's a for sure given. But it's slow. It's bigger than it probably should have been. I don't mind its size, but I mean honestly though, unless you're taking it out for a specific use case, which is again largely as a respawn capability, maybe you want to use it for some medical running, but that's not really a gameplay either. So until they offer some PvE alternatives for medical gameplay, I just don't see it as being very popular, unfortunately, in the verse. I even own one, and I'm still kind of dogging on it here. It just unfortunately is a bit of a underperformer. So the Polaris. I'm torn between something like average and excels. I'll put it in excels because there'll be people that'll say, "Oh my gosh, it should be S tier or something even." But it's good. For it does offer some good capabilities. It's got the respawn beds. It's got four tier two beds. So from that perspective, it's good. It has its own hangar, so you can use it for as a carrier, a bit of a carrier ship. Um, it's not a standout capital ship. Some of the Nursa of the PDCs, I don't think this will notice it too terribly much, and it does pretty well from a cargo perspective compared to something like the Idris. But comparing it to other capital ships, it excels at best. Maybe it's average. As we see more capital ships in the verse, I think you'll see it fall down further in the tier listing. Perseus is in concept, but it's also in production. So that's a ship that will probably come out during. I mean, it's gonna for sure come out during IAE. They've with the trailer showing it. It's all but an assured thing. So looking forward to that coming out. It's probably something that most people will want to try out. It should be for rental as well, I imagine, in game. So give it a try. I don't know where it'll actually stand in the meta. That'll kind of come make its own way. But anyways, it's something you might want to check out. The Orion. So the Orion, unfortunately, is very much so in concept. I'll put it behind the Arastra because of all ships that are going to be RSI and in concept, this one's probably like a near 1.0 type of release type situation. So it's a capital ship, so it would need significant time in order to actually put it together. So it's something we would probably know a year in advance that it's coming along. And again, until we can even sniff out ship refinings coming along, I don't imagine we'll see any updates on the Orion. We'd see the Arastra probably at first before we would see the Orion. So it's unfortunate. So those that might like Orion. So these concepts, if you're interested in these ships at all, it's definitely a good opportunity to buy a CCU with the next closest ship. Again, the only one that may pull itself out of concept into production would probably be the Galaxy here. Leading into another, we have the MR. I'm actually going to put the MR slightly ahead of the Arastra here because there are signs that they're doing like life pods and things of that nature in 4.4, which is somewhat possibly linked in with Bounty Hunting 2.0. There isn't any true announcement that they're working on Bounty Hunting 2.0, but there's signs of it, right? So I'm not going to put a cope that it's in production or anything like that. That ship probably doesn't even need to be in production. It probably just could be released. It's probably like the Legionnaire, where more than likely it's done and dusted. They're just holding on to it because they do want to release this for Bounty Hunting 2.0. So again, it's a ship, if you're interested in these top two, I would potentially prio getting the CCU for these top two if you wanted to, and then put them in your buyback, or you can hold on to them if if you're a firm believer that they're coming out sooner than later. Then feel free to hold on to a CCU for them. That just means that once the ship comes out, if it comes out, the current pricing for them is in concept. So, for example, the Galaxy is listed as 380. So potentially that would be a $400 or higher ship price once it comes out of concept pricing. Additionally, Of note, you can take a look at the loaner matrix, but this does give you access if you picked up this ship for a Carrack. So it's a cheaper way to actually pick up a Carrack. But again, that's not something even I would really, because the Carrack's unfortunately a bit underperforming as well in the current gameplay. So then we have the ES and the Zeus here. These are both average. I'll put them at the top in here. So the Zeus ES is actually one of the best in show ships. So if you wanted to hold on to that, you can actually get a paint this year. And then the CL itself is okay. A lot of people, like it as well, but it's fairly average for what it can offer, and the pricing is fairly high for what it is as far as the pledge price. In-game price is average for what it is. It's standard fare pricing for that particular ship. So yeah, I hope this was helpful for y'all. Let me know if there's something you're interested in for the other manufacturers. I'll probably do Anvil either way, just because I like Anvil ships and I want to discuss those. But yeah, the goal here is just kind of give a baseline about where the ships are at currently as we go into IAE. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Appreciate those taking time to like, subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.